Hello and welcome to Deeper Insights, Episode 1. Today we're going to talk about multiculturalism. And the reason we're doing this is I got a couple questions today on multiculturalism. I typed them out, so I thought, hey, what a good start. If anyone out there has an issue going on in the world that you would like me to discuss, type it into me and I'll probably give it a go. So, I'm going to start with a question I had that sort of builds toward this idea, and it's a theme going on in the world, and it's a way we should think. I think about some of the information that we're getting in the world today. And this question comes from White Guild. And he's asking me about some of the professors that appeared in the film. One was a Swedish professor. He actually coined the term biopolitics, and he actually coined the term geopolitics. And you just don't hear this out there, even in this niche field of biopolitics. Nobody talks about these guys, but that's fascinating. The bedrock of biopolitics and geopolitics come together with Keeling, this Swedish thinker, who was a student of the German strain of biopolitics at the same time. And they all formed what I would call an epistemic community. That's one of these words I got from Foucault, with Alfred Mahan. If anybody's ever heard that term before, he was the one that introduced the American Navy, the Steel Navy, into the United States as the United States turned its corner in becoming a geostrategic powerhouse at the turn of the 19th and 20th century. And I said, well, I'd love to talk about this. I wrote my dissertation about this topic, and I told White Guild I could go on forever and ever. But in response to the question, he goes, isn't blood and soil good? And I said, yeah, it is. But the problem, unfortunately, a lot of, we're embedded into this world that for much of it, the oligarchs have created the state structure into a sort of corporate structure. That doesn't mean that within this structure, we can't have national identities. That's part of what I'm doing here. That's why we resist this ultimate one world corporate takeover that will usurp the power of the states. Within that, we find our nationalism. That's healthy. That's natural for all of us. In fact, if we don't have a sense of it, I think that there's got to be some sort of void in someone's life. So I said, yes, blood and soil. Mm-hmm. But here's, where everything kind of gets tricky. When you break through these kind of thinkers, what are they up to? And what I believe was going on, and people again and again use nationalism as a stepping stone for this empire building project. And I'll get to this in the next question when I talk more about multiculturalism. But they're always part and parcel. They're never really completely separated from the oligarchs who are the masters of war and the masters of empire building. So they use nationalism always as a stepping stone. So today, for example, if you look at the craziness, which is the United States foreign policy, our military policy, our security policy, we watch television and you see all the Marines and these are all great things. I have my background in military geostrategic history. Okay, so these are all great things. What's being done, however, is they're taking, how did I phrase this here, in the name of defense, whatever move we make as a hegemonic power, the United States makes and operates the international system. We are the ones that built the United Nations. We built that monster, right? And we operate it. So each and every military move we have, certainly since the Spanish-American War, but I'd really argue all the way back from the Monroe Doctrine on, whatever we do militarily, it is going to build. It's going to be one other brick in this New World Order, world empire. Unless it was the case that the United States was literally defending its borders. Okay, now we can go both in the Spanish-American War when Mahan created this doctrine that offense is defense, or, the Bush doctrine will get them over here before they come over there. That's wordplay in a sense. It's calling an offensive move defense. It's a great oligarchical or Talmudic inversion, okay, with strategy. The U.S. today, then, however we do it, it's with every military action, the New World Order is going to be built up. The United Nations is going to be built up, and it's kind of a shame. And I take, for example, at the university system, when we teach international relations, you have a choice pretty much. Well, you can do Marxism if you want to do that over there, but you're given realism or a type of nationalism, or you're given liberalism as opposing sort of discourses. But if you take the logic of these two sides that they give you, it ends up at global governance or world federation, because a realist is going to say, in order to secure peace in a realist world, you're going to have world empire. For liberals, democracies don't fight each other, so you have to make everybody else a democracy, and the end will be global governance, but you get the same thing. And so what I said, they want us to have just enough nationalism in our hearts so that we will fight for what's good in our minds about our notion of a nationality within our cultures. And I'm speaking to people in any country around the world. So they want us just enough to fight to build this new world order, but not enough that we can take the spirit of nationalism and really package it into our own sense of being and purpose. And I said, in fact, if you read a textbook in international relations, it won't even devote a chapter to it. It'll devote a segment, and it's considered a psychological disease, or certainly at least a psychological pathology. Do you realize the insanity of what they're teaching? We're teaching. Sorry. I try to give a little perspective on it when I do it. That's what you're taught. Every move, that's how they structured the system. Every move you take, and in fact, all the goodness and the virtues inside you that you're willing to fight for, they invert it into their project. And we'll see this more on the second part of this question. So let me follow through, and unfortunately, I'm going to pronounce your last name. I'm going to have a little trouble with it. Fachin, or if they're hard C's, Fachin, F-A-C-C-I-N. One of my respondents said, he said, thank you for the work. He said, is there, and has there always been in history a known oligarch which made the majority suffer? How could they keep going and doing this for so long? Or was there any actual attempt, to fight them? And in response to the sort of first answer, I'm going to answer like this. The short answer here I'm going to give is yes. Oligarchs and empires go hand in hand. What we call written history, and we can argue about this, whether it began in modern day Thailand, but I'll call it Mesopotamia. That's what we usually think. We see the first family politics, that is oligarchy. They're leveraging the critical resources to make an empire for their own purposes. And we can, when I say history and alternative history, not the accidental history that we get, but look at history in this guise. History can be taught through this one empire project. Each empire builds upon the other: Persia, Greece, Rome. The families intermarry and keep the projects going. There's literally a genealogy back to Mesopotamia. And again, along with these family lines, if somebody suits their purpose, they can intermarry. A Chinese person can come in. Look at the untouchables in China. That's what they had to do. They had to marry out with the bankers. That's why they look a little funny. But the ultimate goal here is the one world project. And so we literally see a project going from the fall of Babel to the Babel that they have in front of the European Union. And I'm just saying, in my opinion, the Bible fits that narrative so well, from Babel to Babel, the re-engineering through this empire project. And the Bible has, I think, something to offer us here if we think of this as a cosmic battle against God and man. Okay, so I said part two of that question. Where does it have people resisted this? Well, yes, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, that's exactly what they were fighting about. Is empire good, or do we want nationalism? But I said the battle really rages in each of us, because in each of us, we are divided. The economic part of our being wants things large. These were the arguments the Federalists made. Even though the United States had just divorced itself from this empire, Hamilton and his group turn around and say, hey, let's build another empire. And everybody's going like, I don't get it. Well, you just said in the revolution, it's terrible, and we're going to create these small little republics because that was the best way to defend against oligarchs. Now here, a few years later, you're coming around and saying, let's build the same thing we just got divorced from. And so that's the argument that the anti-federalist would make. So, but the big part of this is what the Federalists would push. We want goods and services from around the world at the lowest possible price. And we're willing to compromise. You know, back in the 70s, people still wanted to buy an American car, but slowly you just get used to compromising, or they deliberately made these American cars so bad you'd walk over into that. The German economist Friedrich List felt that when you give up on this economic nationalism, it's a slippery slope. He saw it coming into this world federalism. And he was Friedrich List, aware of these the oligarchy, the impending oligarchy in their project. And he's just a wonderful economist that unfortunately is not taught in orthodox economic theory at the university. So we have an economic part of us that wants the whole world. We want to embrace it. We want to have Indian food one night and Chinese food another night, and be able to wear stuff from Old Navy that costs $10 and looks okay for at least a little while. But we have this psychological or spiritual part, which is, I think, the core of our being. And it doesn't want things large. It wants things small, and it wants things local. And the greatest and deepest sense of this satisfaction is connecting with what we could call our people, our peeps. And, you know, that's why I use music as an illustration. You know, if songs that are any good are basically about, you know, and this is how we roll over here in the city, and this is how we roll in the country. And we get moved by those kind of lyrics because they speak to us. So we want to have people that are, it's small, the people that dress like us, the people that act like us. We want to buy things from people that we're familiar. We want that familiar economy. And we want to feel like there's people that we know. And this is what the anti-federalists say. You're going to have politics and economics slow. The oligarchs can't penetrate that. It's a familiar economy. It's a familiar politics. So multinational corporations destroy that. Why? Because we know if you buy an American car, it's just as international as a Nissan, right? Because, you know, Nissan builds their car in 20 different countries. Ford builds their car in 20. It's still, you know, kind of connected to Detroit, and we have that nostalgia for it. But that's what slowly happened with the international economy. So we kind of just give up. We know it's kind of, and then in the back of your eye, it's kind of one corporation. So we kind of give up. You know, we can still make small decisions. We can buy, you know, local at mom and pop stores versus, you know, the Walmart. But for the most part, they've worked to destroy that within us. And we give over to it because we like the familiar labels, and we like it at low prices. So we give into it. So it's been a slippery slope with the advance and the deterioration of our downtowns. And you've heard that kind of argument before. But the multicultural philosophy that I argue is just shoved down our throats at school. And if you do a job interview as a professor, I mean, it's like you could say, here in southwestern Nebraska, we really value diversity. So what are you going to bring to the table? And you have no option of saying, you know, I'm not all that into diversity. It's not my thing. Well, let me tell you, just frankly, from a personal view, I've enjoyed my vast, you know, experiences of different places and different people. And at a personal level, I don't mind that. But the problem with the diversity agenda is that, first of all, multiculturalism is an oxymoron. A culture is something specific. It's about something in particular, and it tends to come about organically as people that are familiar one another develop habits in common with one another over time. So when you want multiculturalism, this world citizen, this global culture that's about everything, well, it's about everything, it's about nothing. It's really not only just trying to deracitate you from your roots, from your people, from your psychological and spiritual sense of what makes you you and gives you a reason to be. That's taken from you when someone's shoving that down their throat. And of course, I'm really kind of a late adopter with these terms. I guess people call it social justice warriors. You know, I guess they're the ones that push that. So they think that, you know, some sort of moral superiority, they're pushing it, but they should take into consideration the spiritual, or at least the psychological element, that you're putting alienation into a person when you're pushing that upon them. That is an alienation from the self. The self is collective. It's collective to a type of identity. It might be your gender. It might be your sexuality. It might be your ethnicity or race. But those are things that are particular, and multiculturalism seeks to erode that. Even if it says it doesn't, that is the effect of it. Okay. And do I celebrate this? Do I get off on saying, no, the thing is you can't hear someone with an advanced degree teaching at a university that's even allowed to say such a thing. So, here I am. So that's what it does. It calls something a culture that's not culture. If they called it anti-culturalism, it would make infinitely more sense. So what is the agenda? Well, when you take what's meaningful about somebody, their very essence and the core identity, and you strip it from them, again, you get the zombie person, you get nihilism. And again, that was always part of this plan, to push somebody into the New World Order. Because if you want to step from India into the New World Order, from China into the New World Order, from the United States into the New Order, if you no longer have that love of the familiar economy, the family and those things, then you're going to step into it because you're completely alienated anywho. So you're going to think like, what do I have left to fight for? But one of the things I want us to think about is the dilemma, and that's how deep this thing goes. They created a system. So whichever theory you grab, and we don't like to hear this. We want our theories. I know that. How are we going to fight them? I know that. So how are we supposed to do this? Well, what's the end game? It's your consciousness. They still can't tell you how to think. They can censor your thoughts, but they can't tell you how to think and what to love and what your passions are. So you fight them here and here. And what emanates from that is your battlefield. And that's what you approach. So that's my 2 cents for today for Deeper Insights, episode 1. Again, if you have anything you'd like me to talk about, throw me a comment right under episode 1. And I look forward to episode 2, and have a good day, everyone.